If you're grieving out there and you don't know what to do, go fishing. Start exercising. I know that everybody says, ugh,
Yeah.
but I started yoga. I do yoga every single day.
So good.
But I do some form of yoga every single day. I just go to YouTube. I do yoga with Adrienne. She's got a million of them. She's got yoga for riders, yoga for equestrians, yoga for back pain, lower back, upper back, legs. She's got a yoga for everything. She's got a 5-minute one or a 45-minute one. Whatever your day looks like, do that one and just do it. Just get the mat out and do it. Once you do it and you learn to breathe, breathing is so important. We're always so worried about staying alive that we forget to breathe, which is the one thing keeping us alive.
Yeah, totally. On today's episode, I have Theo Boyd here, and I am so excited to hear more of what she has to share related to the topic of grief. Theo has an amazing story, and she's going to share with us just kind of what she's worked through in her own personal journey and how we can relate that back to the day-to-day living that we are going through day in and day out in our daily lives. So Theo, thank you so much for being here today. I'm so grateful for you.
Thank you, Erin. Thanks for asking me.
Of course. I would love to start with you just talking a little bit about your personal journey. You have a really incredible story, and I would love for you to talk a little bit about your journey, your story, and kind of where you are today.
I would love to. Talking has never been a weakness for me. Talking has always been a strength. I would get in trouble in elementary school for talking all the time. So I feel like that's a blessing and a gift because now I'm able to talk and try to give grief a voice. Yes. And try to give grief a voice that it never had before. And so I'll take you back a little bit. And it wasn't that long ago. I was a high school English teacher in Waxahachie, Texas. That is north central Texas. And we were out for the summer. And it was 2019. And I got a phone call on July the 29th. It was late afternoon. I was actually getting dressed to go to a museum fundraiser. My husband was very successful, very prominent in the community. And I got a phone call that there'd been an accident on our family farm. And my parents were peanut farmers in north central Texas, but the farm was about an hour south of where we were. And they wouldn't tell me anything over the phone. And in my book, I take the reader through every second of what happened, every moment. And the reader just kind of walks through the grief journey with me. But just to kind of keep it short, I don't want to have to eat up all your podcast time. But once I did get to the farm, I learned that my father had accidentally run over my mother with one of the farm tractors.
Yeah.
And it was instant. And later the funeral director told me that she didn't even know. It was so instant. And of course, from the moment that I got the phone call, my mind is racing because my mom was deaf also. She lost her hearing when she was 18 months old. So texting to us was our world, my mom's especially. And of course, I go into her story a lot, in the book about her background. So it was odd that she wasn't texting me back. I thought they said there'd been an accident on the farm and that my dad was in the ambulance. So when you hear that, you think, well, my dad's hurt,
right.
And I didn't understand that they had my dad in the ambulance because he could not be consoled. And I didn't understand, like, where's my mom? Why isn't she texting me back? But when I got closer to the farm, I slowed down the car. I'd been driving so fast to get there with my flashers on. But when I got to the farm on that dirt road, I just slowed almost to a stop. And my husband at that time was like, why are you stopping and slowing down? I said, because right now everything is still the same.
Right.
And I was so scared because deep down I knew my mom always would text if something, because my dad's health wasn't great.
Right.
And she would always text when something was wrong. So I knew it had to be something with my mom. So of course I get there and learn that my father had been on the tractor and my mom had been handing him something and he had leaned over. And when you lean to your right, what happens? Your left side comes up.
Yeah.
And his left foot had slipped off the clutch. He thought it was in neutral,
Wow.
But it was in high one. It had jostled. It was an older tractor, and I've done a lot of research now, more than I would like to, on tractors like that. And
Yeah.
it had jostled over into high one. And since that time, for my second book, I've done more research, and I've actually learned that that particular tractor, who I not sold, but who I gave to a local farmer, he rebuilt it. He said the brakes and the clutch were completely shot. He had to replace them.
Wow.
And I said, oh, I just cried and cried when I found that out just a few months ago. And I said, I wish Daddy knew. I wish he knew. And that old man looked at me. He said, your daddy knows.
Yeah.
He knows now. And so that just immediately put my dad and I into complicated grief counseling. I had a great counselor. She'd been a friend of 18 years. I'd gone to her through minor life things. You know, I'd gone to her for raising a teenage daughter, blended family, work crisis, never anything like this. So she really put on her Superman cape, and she came to rescue me and my dad and put us through some great complicated grief training. And then that was July of 2019. Then in February of 2020, she died suddenly.
Wow.
Unexpected, blew me away. I cried like I almost felt like I was grieving my mom right then, because I'd put my grief on hold. And I'll talk about that in a little bit, how we will put our grief on hold.
Yeah.
But I had put it on hold. But when I found out she passed, I was at school teaching. I had to leave the room and get somebody to come in with my kids. I was not, you couldn't console me. I was inconsolable. So I lost my counselor, and then I had to tell my dad about another strong woman in my life and his life that we lost. And he just cried and cried, and it broke my heart to tell him that. And so my husband gets this idea to move us closer to the farm. So we moved closer to the farm. Then I found out he'd been having an affair.
Wow.
So then I have to put on the divorce grief. And that's a level of grief like no other. So I wrote about divorce in my book. You know, I've got grief of divorce. And that is really hard because it's rejection.
Yeah.
It's complete. The one person you think has your back is the one person that doesn't have your back.
Yeah.
And it's betrayal, it's rejection, it's just complete homesick. I was homesick from the inside out. After my mom died, I lost like 23 pounds in a month. I mean, I didn't eat. Everybody else was eating. I devote a whole chapter to eating, divorce diet, the death diet, and then there is the discovery diet. And that's the best one to be on.
Yeah.
I'm on that discovery diet right now.
Yeah.
But so going through all the griefs, loss of my mom, loss of my counselor, loss of my husband. And I was living closer to Daddy now. We had made the move. So I was now, you know, on my own, but closer to Daddy. So when I would cook normally for my husband, I would just cook and take it to my dad. And I spent more time with him. And Father's Day morning of 2022, that would be 3 years almost to the day of my mom's accident. I went to check on Daddy Father's Day morning, and I found he had taken his life.
Yeah.
With a firearm. And I found him. I was the first one. And I'm so thankful it was me. And people will say, oh my gosh, how could you be thankful that it was you? And because it's like that movie, Steel Magnolias.
Yeah.
When those of you that don't know, I hope I'm not doing a spoiler here, but you've had about 30 something years to watch it. So let's move on. But I remember so vividly when Sally Field was holding Shelby's hand, Julia Roberts, and then she talks later at the cemetery about how men are supposed to be made out of steel or something. Yet she got those most precious moments, she says, with her daughter when she was brought into this world. And then those precious moments when she left. And I feel like I got that precious moment.
Yeah.
With Daddy, me.
Yeah.
I got it. And I saw him set free. I'm not saying that to condone taking your life. I'm saying that because everybody is different.
Right.
Hence the title of my book. Everybody is different. My dad's situation was completely different. A lot of teenage suicides, I've talked to the parents, they don't understand why. They didn't have a clue. I knew 100% certainty why my dad took his life. It was no shock. So all those griefs, all in this one book that is my baby. And, you know, I think it was Mark Twain that said the two most important days in your life are the day that you were born and the day you understand why you were born.
Yeah.
And I know beyond the shadow of a doubt, I was born to write this book. There will be other books. There's another book coming out in the fall. But this first book is the book. I know my purpose beyond a shadow of a doubt. So purpose changes as we age, but my full 100% certainty, not a doubt in my mind, no imposter syndrome on this.
Right.
I am 100% certain I was meant to share their story. And that's why I'm not stopping. That's why I'm continuing the second book to talk about hope. And I'm just moving forward. So anyway, sorry I answered in such a long answer, but that is my grief that's in the first book here.
It's so profound, Theo. Like, you're talking about just unimaginable loss on so many different levels. And I just really appreciate your transparency, your honesty, your real and raw emotion in it, because I think that's one of the key things we can do inside of the life that we're leading right now, is just being really transparent about what our experience has been and why we've been called to maybe do the work that we're doing because of our own experiences, because of what we've gone through. And you are doing that in such powerful ways, talking about your life and the unimaginable loss that you've gone through and the grief that you've managed. And you're really translating that into ways that people can start to understand, like, how do you live through this? How do you really manage yourself, your emotions, your life through this? So I'd love for you to maybe move into talking a little bit more about that. You know, so many people, a lot of the women I speak to alongside myself, feel like life is hard. Life is heavy. We have all of these things that we're trying to manage, or things we're trying to manage. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about, like, finding strength when you're managing hardship, when you're managing unimaginable loss, and you're trying to figure out how to unpack grief. Like, how do you really find the strength and continue to figure out how to push forward in your life?
You know, and so the subtitle of my book is Learning to Live Through Unimaginable Loss. And I am not a doctor, nurse, psychologist, psychiatrist, counselor. I was a high school teacher and I was a mother.
Yeah.
But I attribute my strength to my foundation. And I talk about that. Chapter 11 is called More F Words. We've got to get more F words in our vocabulary. And I mean foundation, which is what I had: friends, family, food, fun, fellowship, faith. And I talked a good game for a while.
Yeah.
My dad was a minister, 33 years at the same church out in our community. Wow. And he was cursing God. He was saying words I'd never heard him say. And so I was terrified, because in my life, it was Jesus and then Daddy. Yeah. I mean, that was the chain of command. And I just looked up to him like he was Jesus at times. I was like, oh my gosh, you know, very fearful of him, respectful of him, but he's so loving and such a wonderful father. And those F words, I know because I had such a strong foundation that I'm able to go out and speak. Whereas other people that are gone through, and there's people that have gone through much worse, they're not able to speak of their grief. And so they hide it and they shelter it and they shelter themselves and they build the walls. I've got walls. Yeah. I've got all this, but I'm going to refer back to the words my dad was saying. And the first night, it was awful. I texted my counselor, Gail. She texted me right back. Let him say the words that he needs to say. Those are the words that carry the weight of his pain.
Yeah.
And so I thought, okay, she's right. She's always right. But I've got to let him say whatever he needs to say. I can't stop him and tell him to not say those words, because there's no other expression. You know, and I tell people all the time, you have to find an outlet for your grief. At that time, for my dad, in the traumatic stages, the early days, he had to do it through words, through cursing God, you know, and God can handle it. And, you know, he's ready for that.
Yeah.
But I kind of gave up on my faith. I was like, there must not be a God. My dad served God his entire life and he let this happen. I can't let what some people say affect what really should happen here. I've got to listen to the wisdom, my counselor, who I've always trusted. Yeah. And I started to try to get my hands on some books. And friends would come over and bring me a book about grief. And there's just not a lot of books for traumatic loss,
Yeah.
for heavy. And I would get a book. I'm not kidding, Aaron. I would get a book and I would just flip real quick, looking for the page where it hit me as hard as I'd been hit.
Right.
And I finally just said, you know what? I'm just going to write it.
Yeah.
If I cannot find a book that hit me as hard as I've been hit, I'm going to write the book. And
Yeah.
I did. We even put a content note at the beginning. Be mindful of your mental awareness as you read this book.
Yeah.
So anyway, my faith, like I said, I talked a good game. I said, I don't believe in God anymore. He wouldn't let this happen. But every time that I gave up on God, knowing he never gave up on me, I got a sign. Something slapped me in the face. And it was like God saying, I'm still here.
Yeah.
And I'm going to help you through this. And that's why I wrote this second book coming out later this year, because I didn't have enough room in the first book to fit all these signs that have been coming to me from Mama, from the moment she died, from God, and from my counselor, and from my dad.
Wow.
All these signs that have come that are just remarkable. I mean, you are just going to be in shock when you read some of them.
Yeah.
But they've been signs to let me know that I'm on the right path, that this is my purpose, that my parents, being such ministers to the community for almost 50 years, are still ministering to people even in their death.
Yeah.
And it's Romans 8:28 all over again, every single day. And that verse says, sorry, I just got caught up on another verse the other day. All things work together for good to them that love him, to them that love God.
Yeah.
And so all things to God is not all good things.
Right.
All things is all things. He takes all things to turn them around as good. So I thought, you know what? I've got this book. I'm going to go out and try to market it and sell it and go to bookstores and reach people and talk to people. And it's been really crazy, the feedback. I've won 16 national awards for the book. Awesome. 16 national awards by my very first book, 50 years old. That's crazy, right?
Awesome. It's awesome.
And I've just had great, we were in Newsweek and the Daily Mail and the Sun and all these major outlets, these media outlets. So I've gotten to talk to some amazing people, but all in all, answering your question, it is a daily commitment to healing.
Yeah.
You have to commit to your healing. It is a daily commitment that I'm going to decide to get up, make my bed, get out of the bed, make my bed, put some makeup on, which, sorry, I didn't get to that today. I'm going to get out and I'm going to do something that's going to make my mom and dad proud. And in turn, it makes me proud of the life I'm living. It makes me proud to show my daughter, who's 26 years old, who just passed the bar this last summer and is now a criminal defense attorney,
so awesome.
To just continue showing what strong women can do.
Yeah.
Yes, men, I know y'all can too, but women specifically, because we serve those best who we once were. I was a 47-year-old English teacher, and grief just came like a thief in the night. I had no idea it was coming, and it knocked me down to my knees, literally. Yeah. And now I'm back up. You've got to find an outlet for your grief. You've got to find that outlet. And if you don't, it will find an outlet, and you may not like it. And my counselor told me that. She said, I'm worried you're not dealing with your grief because you're caring for your father so much.
Right.
And I said, why are you so concerned? I'll be fine. She said, no, if you do not deal with your grief, it will come out later in a great depression. And so you have to commit to healing and deal with your grief every day. It's your new counterpart.
Yeah.
It just sits right over here, and it's with me all the time.
All the time.
And I think Billy Bob Thornton says it best about the loss of his brother at a young age. He's 50% happy all the time, 50% sad all the time, melancholy.
Yeah.
He uses the word melancholy. So at any given moment, I can be sad. At any given moment, I can be happy. It's a choice. And Daddy always said, I said, how are you doing, Daddy? He said, I'm okay if I don't think too deep.
Yeah.
And there's a danger in that, of thinking too deep. Those of you out there that have experienced traumatic loss, that's why counseling is so critical to healing. Because if you're going to go there and think deep and try to get through that, you really need to be in the presence of a counselor.
Yeah.
That can work you and walk you through it.
Absolutely.
So I really stress that.
Yeah, so good, Theo. I want to talk a little bit more about finding outlets for your grief. I think this is a really important topic for women, especially to normalize and talk about and really share their experiences around. So can you explain a little bit more about what did you do for outlets, and what would you recommend to someone who's maybe managing some level of trauma or unimaginable loss or carrying around grief and doesn't really know how to find an outlet?
Of course, first and foremost is to find a counselor, a church member, a friend, somebody that will let you talk without offering. Now, the counselor can give advice, but friends and family, that unsolicited advice sometimes, I mean, that's how I titled my first book. People kept giving me this unsolicited advice and comparisons.
Yeah.
And that's one of the worst things you can do to a fresh griever, because they don't even know how to handle it. And people were like, well, when my mom died, and all I kept thinking when they were telling me their comparison was, if your dad didn't run over your mom with a tractor, I can't talk to you.
Yeah.
Because my grief is not like yours. My grief is not like yours. That just kept echoing. And that's why it's the title of the book. My grief is not like yours.
Right.
You've got to focus on counseling. Number one, find a friend, somebody that will let you talk and get it out without comparison. And find, what is your hobby? What makes you happy? Mama always said hobbies make you happy. Well, writing had always been a hobby of mine. I'd written poetry, written for newspapers, had no idea I was going to write a book, but I started to just pour everything into this book, never intending anybody to read it. I just thought, this is the way I'm going to heal. I'm just going to write this little thing and make it a book and whatever. And if people want it at Christmas time, that's great. And I'm just going to write exactly how I feel in here. And I was writing my pain on the page. And as I was writing, those of you out there that are going to try writing as your outlet, I would look down at my fingers and they would just be wet. And I'm like, what is happening? I was crying while I was writing and I didn't even realize it.
Yeah.
So as a creative writing teacher of 10th grade kids, we would often come into the classroom and the first 10 minutes was free write. So I'm going to urge those of you out there to do a 10-minute free write. Get out a piece of paper, get your phone, type it in your notes, and just freely write whatever's in your brain. I don't care how horrible it may be, how awful it is, write it out. Get it out of you and get it onto a page. And then guess what? We would shred those papers at the front of the classroom.
Yeah.
Whatever student wanted to share was open, and it was open and they could share what they wrote. But most of the time, all those kids, I worked in a Title I district, a lot of fatherless homes, some homeless students. Yeah. And we would write our pain on the page and go shred it in the shredder. And there's nothing more freeing than doing that. So if you have the ability to write, that is a great outlet. If you don't, go for a walk. If you don't want to do that, be a baker. My mom was an amazing cook and baker, so I cook a lot. When you're in the kitchen and you've got all these pots and things going and the recipe going, you can't think about anything else, but you're pouring yourself into that recipe, into that. That's your energy is going into cooking. So do that. Go fishing. Men, if you're grieving out there and you don't know what to do, go fishing. Start exercising. I know that everybody says, ugh,
Yeah.
But I started yoga. I do yoga every single day. I've been doing it for over a year. Don't think I've been doing it for years. I just started last year.
So good.
But I do some form of yoga every single day. I just go to YouTube. I do yoga with Adrienne. She's got a million of them. She's got yoga for writers, yoga for equestrians, yoga for back pain, lower back, upper back, legs. She's got a yoga for everything. She's got a 5-minute one or a 45-minute one. Whatever your day looks like, do that one. And just do it. Just get the mat out and do it. Once you do it and you learn to breathe, breathing is so important. Yeah. We're always so worried. I heard this the other day on a show. We're always so worried about staying alive that we forget to breathe, which is the one thing keeping us alive.
Yeah, totally.
And I thought that is so genius. I'm going to use that.
Yeah.
We're all so just keyed up and tense and we're like this. And my mom used to say all the time, take a deep breath. Breathe. Remind yourself that you're here.
Yeah.
You're here for a reason. And it's not, I promise you, God is not wanting you to get all keyed up to where you're not breathing. So do some yoga. Find a support group, a grief share group. Find one that works for you. It may not, try another one. A counselor may not be the right fit. Try another one. It took me almost 3 years to find the lady I have now. because I kept comparing everybody to Gail. And you may just find that perfect fit again. Believe it or not, you don't just throw your shoes out when they don't fit anymore and don't go get another pair of shoes. Right. I mean, we don't just go barefoot the rest of our life. So we have to treat our minds like our feet and keep trying on new pairs of shoes and keep it covered and make sure that you're getting it checked and go to the doctor when you need to. Self-care has become a major outlet for me. Self-care has kind of become a hobby for me. I go to get my blood checked, get my numbers checked, checking my A1C, my blood sugar levels all the time. I'm not obsessed about it. Don't think I'm becoming obsessed, but it makes me feel better to know that I'm going to be able to take care of myself. Yeah. So taking care of yourself, I guarantee you, is going to make your family feel better. Because what makes me feel better all the time is knowing that my daughter's taking care of herself. Yeah. So that's, I hope I'm giving enough outlets. Yeah. In the back of the book, I have an exercise called 100 Things. And that's one of those writing exercises. You can do it in your phone. It doesn't have to be 100. It could be 10. It could be 5. But it's 100 things because I felt like my mom was forgotten. I felt like everybody was comparing my mom with their mom's death. And I felt like my loss was forgotten. So I felt unheard. So I got a piece of paper out one day at my dad's table. And it had only been a couple of weeks after the funeral. And I just started writing and I numbered it. And then I numbered it again. Pretty soon I had 100 things about my mom. And it just started, whatever was top of mind. Mama loved me. Mama loved daddy. Mama loved church. Mama loved Jesus. Mama loved the color blue. Mama looked good in pink. Mama loved to bake. Mama loved to sew. Mama was deaf. And I just went on. And by the time I finished it, I felt heard because I'd written about her. Yeah. And I've had people come up to me at book events and they're like, I did the 100 things for my daughter who's still alive and I gave it to her as a Christmas present. Love that. And then I love it. And then another lady, I love that they modified my lesson. Yeah. No teacher loves that more. I was so excited. But one lady said, I wrote 100 things that I hated about my ex-husband and it really helped with my divorce. And I said, that works. That's perfect. Yeah. So the 100 things is just such a great exercise to just get out. So I did 100 things about mama and 100 things about daddy, and I shared them in my book as an example. It's a simple exercise, but people have really tailored it to their life.
That's so good. And I love how you're talking about how that kind of gives you that level of validation and this notion of feeling seen in your own unique experience. And that's what I'm loving the most about what you share, Theo, is how everything that we go through in our lives, in our grief, in everything, every aspect really truly is unique and special to us and the people that are a part of our lives. And I just love that you're giving this level of permission to really stay grounded in that and realizing that the importance of digging into outlets or doing exercises like journaling or your own hundreds practice, how that can really shift how you're feeling about your unique experience and what you've gone through. So Theo, I love that so much.
Thank you.
The one thing that I loved that you shared was this concept of how people put their grief on hold. And with a lot of the clients and women that I speak to and serve, especially in the wellness space, like we kind of get into this idea of pushing our personal emotions aside, whether that's in grief or something else, or we also get into this headspace of comparison, right? Like, well, maybe my experience doesn't measure up to that person's experience, or I don't know how to relate in this specific situation. So I don't end up saying anything or processing anything or leaning into an outlet that I know is going to fill my cup. So I would love for you to talk a little bit about what are the maybe mindset shifts or processes, soundtracks that you've started to tell yourself that you feel like could help other people when it comes to just giving yourself permission to really dig into and own and talk about whatever emotion or grief or experience you're going through in your life.
And I like to call that giving yourself grace in grief.
Love that.
You've got to give yourself grace. If you can't make the event that you had promised your friend you were going to make because you just got sad that day, something signaled or, triggered you at the grocery store and you just are too sad, then that's okay. If you can't get out of bed one day, you just want to be sad that day, that's okay because tomorrow's another day. And you've just got to consistently, like I said, every day is a new commitment to healing. It's almost like an addiction. And every day is a commitment to stay sober. Every day is a commitment to be kind to yourself, be gentle with yourself, give grace to yourself. But at the same time, you don't want to be too gentle with yourself to where you just stay in bed for the rest of your life. Because guess what? You're still here for a reason.
Yeah.
You've got things to do. And that's what I urge people to do is one day because I've heard amazing stories about my parents since their passing, of people they ministered to that I didn't even know about, things they've done in their life, these silent superheroes. And all I can think is, what are people going to say about me when I'm gone? Or who's going to be calling my daughter to tell her what I did that she didn't know about?
Yeah.
So that's what we all need to be doing. And if we're all doing that, the world has no choice but to get better. Yeah. Because we're all contributing something that we've learned. And yes, I felt very unheard. I often tell people, write a book. That's a great way to be heard. Because all of a sudden, some of my best friends that I thought knew how I was feeling said I had no idea till I read your book. Yeah. So if you want to write a book, do it. Write your story. Yeah. Just and it is hard. I'm not going to lie about that. It is grueling. But what you'll have on the other side is so worth it. I have my parents' love story now written down. And you've got to just keep moving forward. Mama always said, don't take life too seriously. Yeah. She was deaf, never complained. If anybody could complain, I would think it would be her, right? Yeah. She never complained. She just went through life, and that was just one more hurdle that she had to jump. She just always said, you don't know what other people are going through. Always be kind. And she just gave some amazing examples in her life. And now, of course, I hear them all the time. But she always said, that's just life. We have to keep moving forward. Anything that happened, that's just life. We have to keep moving forward. You have to keep moving forward. And I don't know why that is. I don't know why we have time. I don't know why we have day and night. God just created it that way. Yeah. So we got to just keep moving forward because there is a reason that you're still here. There's a purpose in your pain. There's a ministry in your misery. There's a reason. So you've got to keep moving forward so that God can reveal that to you. And it will be. Yeah. If you keep moving forward and pray about it, that's something I'm very guilty of, is not praying enough because he wants to hear from us. Yeah. And just keep moving forward in your faith, and God's going to reveal it to you, and you're going to know what you were meant to do. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, it did. And I just can't thank you enough for your heart. It just shines through in everything that you're sharing, and your profound message of just speaking about how do we really work through and manage something like unimaginable loss or grief in all kinds of capacities. I'm someone who has experienced grief through not necessarily leading the life that I thought I was. I think that's a common thing that a lot of people go through. And whether it's that kind of grief or other kinds of grief, I love how you're just really speaking to this idea of permission to experience your grief in a unique way and figure out ways to move forward and find outlets and get into this place of making sure that you're taking care of yourself. It's so good, Theo. I cannot thank you enough. Before we move into wrap up, would you quickly share a little bit of the feedback that you're getting from people when you go to these conferences or book things and you're talking to people about your book and they're sharing with you, this is the light bulb moment I had, or this is how you've changed my life, or this is the mindset shift that I now have been able to make because of your words. Can you talk a little bit about that? I would love to hear what you've heard.
Grief is a little bit taboo in our society. And I recently finished, and it'll be in my second book, and I'll be revealing a lot of it on social media. Until then, I finished a research study with the Center for Generational Kinetics, Jason Dorsey out of Austin.
Yeah.
I did it, and it came in, and it is 100% backs up my claim that we are in a mental health crisis, and grief is a huge contributor to that.
Yep.
The people that have committed shootings, almost anybody that's committed a crime is because they've experienced a loss in their life and they don't know how to handle it.
Yeah.
And so the research study is really remarkable. I'm so excited to share that. I mean, Gen Z, the young generation, they're at the top of not knowing how to deal with their grief. So they're just masking it and hiding it and tucking it away.
Yeah.
And I will admit right now, I don't remember your exact question because I just remember I've got to bring up research because it spoke to that. What
Yeah.
were you wanted me
was
to?
asking more on the feedback that you've heard from
Oh, yes.
people that have
Feedback.
read your book or have, gone through your hundreds exercise, et cetera. Like, tell me what they're sharing with you and what mindset shifts they've gone through.
Okay, and that's where I was starting out and I got on a different road.
Okay.
Grief will create an introvert, even if you were an extreme extrovert. So going to book events with this book has been very interesting because you'll have people see the word and just completely do an about face and go the other way.
Yeah.
Because I just immediately know they're not dealing with their grief.
Yeah.
Because somebody that hadn't experienced grief or anything, they'd read it and be like, oh. But somebody that's in grief, that's not dealing with it, they will look at it and just do an about face.
Wow.
Other people will come up, they want to hear my story, and then they immediately start crying to tell me their story.
Yeah.
My mom and dad died close together. My son died. Some of the most profound remembrances for me are people that bring the book in with them to have it signed. They'd already ordered it and they'd already read it. And one lady said she took it with her to the cemetery to read to her 17-year-old son that died in a car accident.
Wow.
She read him the part where I talk about how I want to get in the dirt and go lay with my mom in her grave with her.
Yeah.
And she said, my family would have thought I was nuts if I said that. But instead, I bought everybody the book at Christmas and said, read the book. That's how I feel.
Yeah.
Then she didn't have to talk about it.
Yeah.
This is how I feel. Read it. And then you'll know how to better help me, maybe.
Yeah.
But I've had a lot of people say it's an easy read on a hard subject.
Yeah.
Because the way I write is like I talk. So I use dialogue. I take you back. I write in a memoir way. So I'm kind of taking you back on my journey. And people have said, I love the imagery. I could just picture the farm, and where you were. But I love that you were able to write down what I can't write down.
Yeah.
And that's when I started to realize this is my purpose, because these people, for whatever reason, their childhood or their current situation, are not able to write down their feelings.
Yeah.
So it's like God gave me all these jobs in my life that led up to this one job, the school teacher job and being a waitress, serving people.
Yeah.
So that now I can serve people in a new way with my parents' love story and keep them on the journey with me to show them how you can move forward and you can still bring them with you.
Yeah.
So I've had amazing feedback. I love feedback. I love nothing more than getting a review and going and reading the review.
Yeah.
And it's a great feeling when somebody reads your writing that you never intended anybody to read, and they tell you that it helps them and it inspires them. And I'm like, really?
Yeah.
I'm just like, wow. And now, as I kind of mature in this role, I'm learning to accept that and say, I'm so glad that it's helping you. I've got another book coming out called Hope All the Way. Yeah. And it's about all the signs. And I really am excited to share those because I was so upset I couldn't fit them in the first book. So the people have been so, so nice and so warm. And we've met some amazing people that I don't think would have talked to their best friend about what they talked to us about.
Yeah. You're giving people a voice. That's what it sounds like. And that is really one of the best gifts you can give people who don't know how to really put their emotion, their feeling, their intense grief into words. And it's just such an incredible gift that you're giving to people, Theo. And I'm just so grateful to connect with you. Your story is so,
and I'm so glad you had me.
Oh my gosh, so profound. Can you quickly just share how people can find you online, connect with you, buy your book? I would love for you to share that.
I have a website, and it is called Think Theo. That's my brand, thinktheo.com. It's ThinkTheo.com. The book's on Amazon, anywhere books are sold, and it's called My Grief Is Not Like Yours by Theo Boyd. And you can also go to Facebook. I'm very big on Facebook. It's Think Theo, ThinkTheo. I'd love you to be on there and read some of my posts and keep up with me. When you go to the website, you can sign up for my monthly newsletter, and I give away things. Like at Christmas, I gave away 3 boxes of homemade peanut brittle, my mom's recipe. And I give away things. It's so much fun, the newsletter group. So those are different ways. I'm on Instagram and TikTok and all those, but mainly keep up the most on my Facebook Think Theo page.
Okay, great. And when does your next book come out?
Well, we're still waiting to find out the exact day, but we're shooting for the first week of December.
Awesome.
So it'll be available for pre-sale here pretty soon, and those Black Friday pre-sales, and then it'll come out in December. And in the first book, I included 4 recipes of my mom's. So in this next book, I'm including 10 recipes.
Awesome.
And 8 of them are Christmas recipes. So you can have your book at Christmas and have the recipes.
That's so wonderful, Theo. Thank you so much. We will have everything linked in the show notes of this podcast. So if you're interested in getting connected to Theo, make sure you head there to get to her website, buy her book, and look forward to her next book coming out at the end of this year. And Theo, thank you so much for your time today. I am so grateful for everything that you shared.
Thank you so much for letting me share it. And I hope I've helped somebody out there today.
You absolutely did. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. I know balancing time and energy can be a challenge, and I'm so proud of you for listening in and investing in your wellness journey. I feel incredibly grateful to connect with you and for the opportunity to share more knowledge, stories, and encouragement related to all things wellness. I would love to hear how this podcast has served you. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review on either iTunes or Spotify. Your support truly means the world to me and helps me reach more women just like you and me who are looking to transform their health from the inside out. Plus, when you share this episode with a friend, we invite more women in to learn alongside us. What a gift. Remember, knowledge is power, and the more we know, the better we can do. For ourselves, for our families, and our future. Well done on taking the step towards a healthier, happier you. Until next week, stay empowered and stay well.